And so, and then, but there's a way in which, this, when we talk about anti-blackness, we talk about, and there's this very coloniality here, because we, like, Leonie, when you were mentioning the iconography and the statues, the public memory of in the global community, um, and why this is allowed. Why do we praise um, these murderers?
Mhm.
These, what is this praise really about? And what are the conditions that would make this kind of, I want to say, like a true, a critical, like the truth tell. Are the conditions that would make that possible? Because I'm just thinking through, like, yeah, we had, all these other statesmen and um, political pundits and figures and so forth to weigh in, but they don't want to talk about, what's happened in the motherland, what's happened in a lot of these places around the world, and what these nations too are old. What we're owed, and I'm speaking specifically to reparations. That's the
Mhm.
next real conversation to have.
Yes.
And so, and I noticed, and I'll just say this quickly: the tone shifts when we think through folks who are too scared to think about abolition, and freeing us from the carceral state and abolishing the police. For folks who can't think through that, and so, if we use a kind of euphemistic language, defunding the police, which is, some would say a step to abolition, or abolishing the police. But when you think through that, and so the tone shifted, I noticed on Twitter, or at least
Mhm.
my little space of Twitter, when folks said, "Well, it's hard to imagine defunding the police, but they've been defunding education for years." I mean, the conditions that we're asking people to learn. And so again, I think I'm still at I'm still holding strong, you all, my position. I want to see a reckoning, the institution. I want there to be a full-fledged reckoning of what people are owed. I want, and I think this is just, and I hope, we've just, the conversation has just begun. Again, because I want there to be a centered, a real, and not for show, or because it's, an election year, but a discussion about reparations. What would that look like? What are the conditions that would make that critical conversation possible?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm passing the mic.
No, man, that's great. It's great. It's what you're speaking to, what I'm hearing you speak to, Nicole, is that like it can't just be about what will not be and what needs to change. You also have to step into the vision of what needs to be created, right? Because the thing is, like I was reading an article about how essentially the incarceral state is not just about anti-blackness, but it's also a jobs program in the South. Like that's essentially why all the big jails are there, because it's unskilled labor and people can get paid a living wage, and so therefore you have a large prison system, um, in the southern states in which there's lower education and lower cost. And so, yeah, if you were to defund police or to move into an abolition, you have to have a response to what that is going to do economically, because it's so part of the structure of the country. You have to have a response to what that's going to do economically to the country, because it would devastate everybody, right? Like you can't just take out huge industry and not replace it with something else. So I think it speaks to that. But that's what I'm hearing you speak to, is that like, um, you know, you're talking about like reparations, but it's just also about the fact that you can't just defund police and not replace it with something else, and not like new police. Like, I'm actually working with a friend of mine on an alternatives to police project, and and so what does it mean to replace a violent police force with a community response unit that is nonviolent?
Yes.
Like, so, because you have to have something there because it's needed.
Right.
It's just that it doesn't have to be violent. Like, I was talking to somebody about, this was on like Black Twitter, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. There's like 6 police officers from like Stockholm, Sweden or something, and they were on vacation in New York, and they were on a train, and these 2 Black guys were drunk and got into a big fight. Like, were really hurting each other. And these 6 police officers subdued these guys. And I remember it was on Black Twitter because the police officers are like they took the guy and placed him on the ground. They didn't throw him on the ground. They asked him if he was okay. And people were like, he asked him if he was okay? Like, like the fact that you can, that you don't have to put everybody in a chokehold because they used a counterfeit $20 bill, which they may or may not have known was counterfeit.
Right.
It's like, these are things that have to be learned. I mean, I saw today the police union in New York and that asshole. Like, I just was like, did you guys see that?
I didn't see it. Who, Lynch?
No. It was like, I think he's the head of the police union for NYPD. Maybe that is his name. I didn't catch the name. I'm not remembering the name. But, it's like one of these, like, he's like tough talking. It's like from a TV show, like the way that he's talking. He's like, this shield still has shine on it. And it's just like, and all this bullshit. And the people are just like killing it, like on the internet, like, because it's just like, there is, but I see where that comes from, because the police have been treated like heroes. They're referred to as heroes all the time. I mean, all the time.
Yeah.
So the fact that anybody saying anything critical about them that's happening on an it's so bad, their behavior that's happening on an international scale, is just like, their brains are not processing what's happening to them right now.
Right.
Yeah, any little clap back they get,
anything, very fragile.
Short-circuiting. I just read something a little while ago saying, I think it was Minneapolis, 46 police officers had resigned from the force. But I think as I'm hearing the defund the police argument, it's not about shrinking the economy. It's really about redirecting some of the resources that are spent on policing to other public services, and reimagining what it is we want police to do and how they do it. I think it was Kamala Harris that was saying, or maybe not, I've listened to so many people, was saying, for example, if you call 911 to report a domestic violence situation, instead of sending a police, maybe we send a domestic violence team.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing that I'm working on, is something like this, that I'm starting looking at, because you do have alternatives to police in other parts of the world, because there are parts of the world where George Floyd happens every single day or multiple times a day, like Brazil, for example.
Absolutely.
There's like, right? I mean, you bump into somebody and there's a public lynching, and that's like, Rio has like 5,000 deaths a year. So shootings.
They had a whole slew of them in Chicago this past weekend.
Yeah.
Because it seems like the police are kind of blue fluing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
to mitigate the conditions that support what we want to call criminal activity, right? If I'm hungry, I got to eat. I mean, and that's real. Like we literally, folks here around the world, people are starving. They're
Yeah.
food insecure.
Yeah.
I don't know how people
Homeless,
do it. I don't
house
know.
insecure.
I know people
I think
who.
you want to look at what is criminal. I think it's criminal to be starving and not feed your people. Whereas when we were doing the workshop on Rikers in American jail, and it turned out that in order to house one prisoner for a year, it's over $220,000 a year. And most of that money does not go to people that work for by the hour. It goes to the super rich. So if you restructure some of these jails so why, if my loved one is in jail and he needs a pen, why is the pen $5? Why is the big pen $5? So if you pull the greed out of the system, you will find that you're not going to lose that many jobs. So all of this is based on the fact that these people who pull out billions of dollars a year, because they say to police unions, let's make sure you keep those quotas, make sure you keep those bodies in those cells. Otherwise, we don't make our bonuses.
Right.
And so this whole system, I think for me, I would love to see an expose about what happens behind this system, where all the connections are, how all of this works economically, because this isn't, I can see people giving cops free rein on the street, but this is all orchestrated by cash.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
They exist as well to protect the ruling class, the elite, to
There you
protect
go.
their
There you go.
power, their resources.
Yeah.
And so that's once we get beyond the fear of not living in a police state, then, but are we there yet? I don't think so. I think we'll continue to have this conversation about defunding. This is an election year. So, there are your politicians, our politicians are going to be a little bit more responsive around that. Um, but can people trust each other like that, or move to a kind of shared vision and investment in their own communities? Because when we speak of abolition, you can't have a passive investment, in your community. It does require us to really have kind of that kind of a sweat equity kind of working together
Yeah.
in our communities. So are we there? But I will say, at least I'm glad that we are, there's a conversation and call to action. So I'm curious to see, what's gonna come of all this, what will materialize. Geo, it just kind of reminds me of your kind of starting with Audre Lorde and talking about the master's tools. And I think that was just kind of what kept kind of guiding me. I kept going back to that throughout this section, and I'm tired of using the master's tools.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
The
And I,
thing,
I want a better way.
the thing is that there are people who are doing things in a different way. It's not. Yes, you could, in terms of obviously the United States, like most other countries, but like U.S. capitalism is special. I have
Yes,
to say.
yes, yeah. That's what I'm
But
thinking in that context.
there are
Right.
people though who like. I got paid last month $1,100 out of reparations fund.
What?
Yes. I was doing volunteer work for an organization. I spoke to my sustainability needs, and they had a reparations fund. to pay me money.
Wow.
US dollars. I know of intentional communities that have spaces and houses dedicated to formerly incarcerated, where they're wrestling with that very thing of people who have been in the system for a long time, now learning to even like live together, even with other people who've been in the system for a long time, and just learning how to do it without somebody telling them what to do, and learning how to adjust with that. I know people who live off of $2,000 a year because they barter their way through community for all the food and the housing that they need. Like, and that's just who I know. And I'm barely touching any of that stuff. I mean, I work with people who try to change the world, so this is why I have it. So it's there. There's knowledge within the country about how to do that. Like, why it is that, like, oh, if one of us loses our job, how can we pull together enough money to get the rent paid?
Right.
Like, there are people who actively know how to do that. And also, we know it. This is what we come from, right? If we start to think of this 500-year, like, you know, this 500-year interlude of the creation of African Americans through enslavement, it's just, you know, it's a blip. We have thousands more years of history of living in collective community that's available to us, and that knowledge is somewhere. It's in our bones. So I think that's where my sense of hope comes from. Again, and it's not as though the United States is dead if, like, Trump gets elected. It's just things will have to get a lot worse before they get better. I mean, it's just,
If that man
that's
is
just the
still
thing.
elected, Leonie, and some of what I try not to think about is when I see folks marching, taking to the streets here in America, and I see white males, and if memory serves me correctly, over 65%, right, voted white men voted for Trump. So it's like this is what you all helped to put into the White House.
Yeah.
I don't remember white women. I think it was about 50 or so
Yeah,
percent. I can't
they
recall.
voted for Trump. White women put Trump in
Yeah,
office.
Heavily.
Yeah.
overwhelmingly. But weren't they at about 50 something percent? And then white
Yeah, but
men,
he's
I think.
losing a lot of support
He
among
is.
women
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
and
definitely is.
older people.
But it's like,
Yeah.
why did it take this mangled experiment for them to understand what and to see what we clearly saw? We knew that this man, that this electing him, this was, tragic. So I don't understand why it took them to take those actions that now have to be, in many regards overturned. Um,
Well, that takes
not
me back
meant
to
to
the
leave.
beginning, to the beginning, Nicole, where where I was saying, I don't know that ripping an asshole is the best way to get people to hear you. And we can see just going back to 1981, and we know that the problem is much older than that. They don't hear us, and that's the point of this section. They don't hear us, and therefore they don't benefit from the particular vantage point, from the particular knowledge bases, from the particular contributions that we can make to the collective conversation. And to what Leonie was saying, I think
Yeah.
that's
I
what
think
all of the women in this section are kind of saying, that is the master's
Yeah.
greatest fear, that we will connect and we will understand how to support and nurture each other. And then he knows his days
Yeah.
are numbered. But the devil's not going down without a fight. Trump had a private meeting with police officers, and God only knows what was said there. But I hope we make it to election day. Leonie.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that, like, for what you were saying too, Nicole, not only, and Michelle, not only are they not hearing us, but the thing is, what they liked what they were hearing. If you were listening to Trump, if you're the average American, white American listening to Trump when he was running for election, greatness was ahead of you. Greatness was ahead of you. He said all the right things to make people just feel like, yeah, it's going to be a brand new day, right? And these white people are also living under the thumb of oppression. They just don't know it. So to have somebody tell them the positive message about things being great and things being restored to how it used to be and all that nostalgia shit, when you have been seeing your own income decline over the last decades, you have seen your own, that would have felt good, right?
Yeah, and I don't
so
think
if they have to step on the backs on a few people to get there,
they didn't mind.
Especially
But I
for
don't
Black
think they
people.
realize as much as they do now that Trump is literally delusional. You know, I mean, you got 100,000 dead folks. That's their family.
Yeah.
You know, you got 110. I don't even know where we are right now.
Yeah.
110,000 dead folks. And he's telling you, we've done great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best country in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's stuck on that lie, right?
Yeah.
I see we have an extra guest, Kim.
Oh, yeah.
We got a little
Buddy.
extra guest.
Yeah, where's
Cutie
the
pie.
What you want to say, buddy? You got something to put in?
Got something to say,
You
buddy?
got something to say?
Hi, buddy. You remember me? He likes me.
You remember me?
Oh.
He says I'm mostly black, but I'm white on my stomach.
He's truly integrated. More power to Buddy.
This
He's
has
trying
been
to figure out who I'm
fun.
talking to. I just feel like as long as this country keeps thinking about scarcity, that you can manipulate whites so much by saying, we got to keep the status quo. In so many years, we're not going to be the majority anymore. This rhetoric. And so Michelle had sent me a clip today when they were talking about the guy who founded the term the alt-right. And he was just like, so insane. He was just talking about, he just wants to keep white pure. White has to stay pure. And so there's a pathology to racism that I'd like to learn more about, because I think sometimes when we're talking as if there's one group of white people and there's one group of black people, because there are actually some black people who are Trump supporters. So it's like all of these shades of different types of people coming from different places, and how do you come up with an equitable solution, taking in consideration that each one needs a different message. Like Michelle is saying, like there are certain people that you can, do the Audre Lorde thing. But then there's some other people that you better make sure that you come at them from whatever it needs to happen, because there are people that just are not. I think some of the people are evil.
Yeah.